Okay, here we're going to graph y equals minus cosine x plus pi. So, as we talked about in the last video, let's do this step by step. Actually, to make this a little more involved, let's just make it minus 3. All right, so do step by step. Take this part. What is the graph of y equals cosine x plus pi? Just do that part, then we'll worry about this. All right, well, as we talked about before, our function is cosine x, so this we could think of as f of x plus pi. That tells us that this is going to move the cosine graph to the left by pi units. It's going to take this whole cosine graph here, and it's going to move it to the left by this distance. So in other words, this point here gets moved over to here. This point here gets moved over to here. That distance is pi. This, when we move it over, that becomes pi over 2. This point here goes over to pi. And if I kept going here, this point here would come over to 3 pi over 2 if this was extended here. This here would go over to there. Similarly, this goes over to here. This is minus pi over 2. This gets moved over to here. It just gets moved over to here. And then we connect our dots here. We get that basic graph. All right, so that's the graph of this. Now we've got a -3 in front. So all we're doing now is we're taking each one of these values and we're multiplying it by -3. So keep in mind, back here, all I did was move this graph to the left by pi. So this is still 1, and this height here is 1. So those are 1. Now we just take each number and multiply it by -3. So right here, well, our y value is negative. Right here, our y value is -1. When I multiply that by -3, -3 times -1 is +3. Wow, this is going to get pretty big here. Let me just go up to here. Let's say this is 2. Let's say that's 3. -2, -3. So for this point, again right here, when we have this point here, the y is equal to -1. That's the value. This is -1. Multiplied by -3, -1 times -3 is +3. The value here is 0. 0 times -3 is 0. The value here is 1. 1 times -3 is -3. Here the value is 0. Here the value is -1 times -3 is +3. Move over here. 0 times -3 is 0. This value is 1, and 1 times -3 is -3. And now we just connect these dots with our cosine graph. Not very good, but you got the idea here. You just connect these. That's the graph of -3 times the cosine of x plus pi, this purple graph.